I'm going to turn it over. This presentation will be recorded. The slide deck and the recording will be available at ctstate.edu/webinars, probably by the end of the week. And if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. They will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Further ado, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are going to pull up a slide deck and we'll begin momentarily. So welcome to the CT State Informational Webinar Series. Today we're talking about student affairs. On the left, that's me, Michael Buccilli, Associate Vice President of Student Success Management. And I'm joined by a co-presenter. I'll let Meredith introduce herself as well.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Meredith Yuhas. I'm the Director of Mental Health and Wellness for CT State.
Great. So just to kick us off, all of us on here listening understand the importance of student affairs, right? How critical it is to our student success, and that student support has been identified by our inaugural president, Dr. John Maduco, as a priority area. We know that students with the appropriate supports thrive in the classroom, reach their goals, and obtain family sustaining wages. So in student affairs, we have leadership on every campus. Each campus has either a dean or associate dean of student affairs, student development, and in that role, they play a key part in ensuring that those services are meeting the needs of our students. They also work with a dedicated team of professionals on each campus. In our central office, we're a small team, but we work in collaboration with the campus leadership to make sure that services are delivered in a comprehensive way to meet the needs of our students across the state of Connecticut. So some of the major things we've been working on, we can't cover everything in student affairs, so we really are going to focus on some of the new things that we're working on, some of the projects that have been ongoing over the last year or so. So we've been working with our vendor Simplicity with two specific systems, Advocate, and Accommodate, and creating single instances for CT State so that we can support a seamless services for our students across the campuses. So many of you may have interacted with these platforms both as a back-end user or as a faculty or staff member who was maybe submitting a concern about a student. So we were deep into this process and have engagement from stakeholders from across the campuses. We're looking at two separate systems, right? So Simplicity Advocate will be our system used for student conduct, and each campus has a student conduct lead, typically the dean or their designee. We will be using Simplicity Advocate for care reports. This is for any student, faculty, staff, or community member to submit any type of concern that they might have about a student who's in their class or a peer. Also, our equity and civil rights, also referred to as Title IX and DEI, will be using the system as well for folks to submit those reports and make sure that we create a safe environment for our students to learn. Simplicity Accommodate has been used by many of the colleges for disabilities. Some call it accessibility services. That will continue. Again, this will be a single instance. And we've added another instance of Accommodate for our mental health and wellness, which is a new aspect of student affairs for most of the campuses, not all. Several of the campuses are a few steps ahead, but we'll get to that later in the presentation. But this technology platform really does kind of allow us as professionals in student affairs to share information. Our students are going to be taking classes across multiple campuses, much more than ever before. So this really lets us understand and get students the support they need in a very timely way. I'll talk a little bit about career services. So from our student success management team here in New Britain or central office, Dwayne Price has been doing a phenomenal job liaisoning with the career services folks on each campus. And the level of service does vary by campus. Some of the campuses have very robust career services centers, and others have a much slimmer staff. We understand that, but some of the pieces that we're trying to work on and get consistent for all students, we'll focus on here. And no pun intended, Focus 2 is a technology platform most of the campuses have been using, but I think it's going to be much more widely used as we move into this next year and the future. So Focus 2, we're developing a single instance based on the new CT State curriculum, right? So it's connected to the degrees and certificates that are offered at CT State. Students can engage with Focus 2 to explore pathways, explore careers, develop a career portfolio. You can take very short career assessments in there and get a better understanding. We know a lot of our students come in and just say, hey, yeah, I want to be a nurse, or I'm going into psychology, but really don't know the types of jobs that might be available, what type of schooling they would need to obtain those jobs. So this is a great tool. This is a tool that we'll be able to use in advising. Advisors can refer students to this tool. The career services staff have a lot of experience using this tool and probably even deeper assessments than this. But this is also a tool for our career services staff on campus. And finally, our CCS 1001 faculty. So that's our new required first-year experience course. It's part of the general education. And one of its primary outcomes is that students explore and create a career academic and career plan. So that portfolio tool is going to be extremely valuable for faculty teaching that course. And the collaboration between career services, the CCS faculty, and the advisors using this tool is going to be a phenomenal asset to helping our students really get on a path and know their direction. The second item, the National Career Development Facilitator Program, fortunately with some grant money that we had, we were able to get 19 members across our campuses certified. They are working on the exam portion of it to get the credentialing. I believe about half already have gotten the full credentials. But this is kind of a national certification, and it really has a pretty in-depth knowledge base. So those folks will be able to share and be experts on the campus, partner with advisors, CCS faculty, etc. And finally, job boards. We will have a CT State job board. That platform is being developed currently. College Central Network has been used for about 15 years at most of the campuses, and will be continued through this year as we move into our first year as CT State. Next, talking a little bit about testing and placement, and I know it kind of falls in different spots on each campus, but most typically in student affairs, we have testing and placement. It's part of the admissions pipeline. It's also testing in other areas, and there's a lot of change in this area, right? So ACME has our alignment and completion of math and English has changed how we do placement into this co-requisite model for math and English. And in turn, the placement metrics and placement process has changed. So those test administrators have been working diligently and meeting now weekly to work through these changes. They're meeting with the Banner team, who is working on the back end of the programming. We've been talking through process. Each campus's process may be slightly different based on their resources and where students complete testing and engage in the placement process. So some of the things they've been working on, for example, is the English as a second or other language LOPE testing. So that is the only AccuPlacer test we are now using as CT State. Also, the writing samples for ESOL is another placement measure. The English writing samples, or formerly known as challenge essays, some of the campuses have had this for a long time, and others, this is quite new. So they're really talking through how to complete that process. And finally, Alex PPL. This is a tool that is used It can be used for students to move their placement upward, right? So if a student comes in and their high school GPA or SATs place them into a co-requisite course in college algebra, and they really need pre-calculus for their program, they can engage with this tool, take low stakes assessments kind of on their own and a proctored assessment to really move up levels. It is also used kind of as a supplemental before you begin your math course instructional method. So students can engage with the platform to brush up on their math skills. We know that if you've been out of math for a while, that you get rusty, right? You forget your algebra. So the ALEKS PPL is now available to all students, which is really helpful. And then there's additional testing. You know, this varies by campus. Other testing centers offer CLEP or TEAS or foreign language proficiency tests. So that will still vary by campus. And we're in the process of getting that information together to have a placement and testing website that is easy to navigate and then have specific information by campus. Guided Pathways Advising is the redesigned advising model that we've been implementing now. We can flip to the next slide. So the role of the GP advisor really is to deliver academic advising to all populations, collaborate with faculty and program coordinators, to manage academic alerts that come in from the faculty, and provide students with resources and support when needed. The advisors conduct outreach to their assigned caseload. They do check-ins periodically throughout the semester to see how they're doing and just to let them know that they're there on their side to support them and help ensure that they're successful in their coursework. A little bit about caseload. We have approximately 133 GP advisors statewide. The average caseload is 248 students, so that's active caseload. They do have students on their caseload who stopped attending for a semester. They remain there for 3, almost 4 semesters, but they can see just their active. And then we assign based on program of study or area of study. So if you are an advisor who specializes in the math and science area, you would have students who are in maybe the bio pathway or the math pathway for the transfer ticket degree. If you're in technology and engineering, you would have students focused in that area. Finally, advising students during the transition to CT State is complicated. Advising appointments are taking much longer than they used to. You're looking at 2 audits. You're seeing where courses used to fill a requirement, now they are not. So they're really working closely with academic leadership, with campus leadership to help students ensure that no harm is done to students, right? We've talked about this do no harm, and now we need to live up to our promise to students. So our advisors are on the ground working through that each day and working closely with their collaborative partners on campus. We conducted a holistic student support survey. It first went out in the fall of 22 and again in spring of 23. More than 40% of our student population responded to the survey. So for any of you who've done survey research, that is an astronomically high number. I even questioned it when I saw it. I said, are you sure? Let's look back. And indeed, more than 40% of our students are responding to this survey. And we're learning things about our students that we kind of intuitively knew, but now we have actual data to back it up. And that data is really being used in 2 ways, on the micro and macro level. On the micro level, our advisors can reach out to those students. They can look at the survey results while meeting with the student and talk about services that are available on and off campus. That data is also being shared with all our chief student affairs officers and other key stakeholders on campus, maybe the food pantry or the wellness counseling center, disability services, to do additional outreach to students. It also can be used kind of at the macro level to make a case for and explain the needs of our students when we look at potential grant opportunities or funding opportunities as well. So is it working? GP advising. So recently we started pulling data from our advising software, CRM Advise, and we looked at students who had 0 contacts with their advisor, 1 contact, and 2 or more. And this first slide shows their persistence, so from fall 22 to spring 23. And you can see the students with 0 appointments completed persisted at 64%. It jumps up to 82, then 87%. So if they met with their advisor, it matters. They have that go-to person. They maybe resolved an issue that otherwise would have knocked them out from returning the following semester. So these you can see at the bottom as well, the significance value of 0.000 is as high of a significance value as you can have. This rules out that this was by chance or happenstance. Similarly, this next slide shows us credits attempted. So again, the 0, 1, and 2 or more completed appointments. As you can see, the credits attempted increases from 8.4 to 9.3 up to 9.8. That matters. The research tells us that the more credits attempted and the more credits completed, they have a better pace towards completion and students are more likely to complete. So this is a real good leading indicator towards increased completion rates. And finally, the last slide is credits completed. And I sometimes like to preface this with, more than 2/3 of our students are part-time. So if you're showing this to a 4-year flagship university, they'd say, oh, that's a really low totals you have there. But as a community college, we expect that our students are working 2 and 3 jobs, managing life and family. So with 0 appointments, you saw 6.2 credits completed, up to 7.5, and then up to 7.8. So meeting with your advisor matters. We know that. The data is telling us that. This is not by chance. This is statistically significant. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Yuhas, and she is going to give us some information about mental health and wellness and other areas related.
Sorry, Meredith, you're on mute.
That's okay. Perfect. I get a second chance here. So thank you so much. I'm providing an update from our last webinar and the progress we've made. And again, the overall mission is really to develop consistent and equitable mental health services across CT State and at every campus. The existing counselors on the campuses have made incredible progress in developing a unique program of services for our students. We have developed a handbook that everyone, we can look at specific procedures and policies. We have developed a co-supervisory model. So we have myself as the clinical supervisor, but on campus, the wellness counselors directly report to the deans, assistant deans of student development as their administrative supervisor. So we've looked and worked together to develop a partnership to help develop the wellness program. One of the things that has been pretty comprehensive is developing an electronic record system, again, for each of us to be able to keep really important required records, but also, like I said, looking at important statistics on utilization to help us, again, focus on specific needs of our population. All the services are having both a satisfaction survey, so all students who use our services will also ask about how our services were so we can continue to improve them. We also will have some outcomes assessment. So are our services effective? In the time that we see the student, are we impacting, are their symptoms decreasing? Are we being effective? So be able to look at a lot of data. One of the elements that the mental health and wellness counselors have started, and then I'll go on to the next slide and say another group is also working on, is a very comprehensive mental health and wellness strategic plan. There is a comprehensive plan with very specific objectives. One of the objectives is specifically having a very unique aspect of an equity plan and also including, again, assessment. Next. And so, like I said, looking ahead. So we are currently engaged in a process to hire new counselors. So currently there are 9 counselors across the 12 campuses. There are a number of campuses who do not have any counselors. So that is, again, a significant commitment from our administration and President Maduco regarding mental health on every campus. So we are currently in the process, the search committee, of hiring 7 new counselors. So hopefully by mid-July, there will be a wellness counselor on every campus. And so that's really exciting. Some campuses have 2, whether they, most likely they had 2 in their structure previously. So certain campuses that are larger have multiple campuses, may also have 2 counselors. Once the counselors have all been hired, we have a lot of really incredible training to have everybody be consistent with the handbook and about practices across the system. And we will be working on, really having a terrific supervision model where they'll consult with myself, but also with each other to provide the best services for our students. One of the things that we've been sort of looking at is the further development of some basic needs and sort of responding to students who need some support services in areas of, whether it's financial insecurities, food insecurities, housing. And so in some campuses, they have some designated case managers. And so what we are expanding to do is they will also be using the same electronic record system with different, security to help manage and again, keep statistical data on the students' needs. Some of what I call looking ahead is some elements so every campus is very different in different stages of development with their mental health and wellness services. Some have had services for a long time, some do not have any. And so some of the programs that are developed are sort of moving on to some additional expanded services. And so one of the things also, hopefully, that we're looking at is being able to host some telehealth groups that'll be available to all students at CT State. We are looking into having graduate training students to help us with our services and to really partner with a number of the universities in Connecticut to also provide those training opportunities and some of that workforce development. And so in addition to that, we're also looking at developing some peer leadership educators who can help with wellness outreach. The statistics say how effective peer education is with students, and so it will provide them some leadership opportunities, but also provide outreach education to other students. Next. So JED. So if folks haven't heard about JED, so JED is a foundation that is committed to all aspects of mental health and suicide prevention. And one of their specific signature programs is called JED Campus. And the JED Campus is a program, and it's at different levels, but kind of typically a 4-year program that has multiple components. And so every school in the system, so not just the community colleges, but also the universities, have been able to engage in becoming a JED campus. And so at this point, most of the campuses have begun to do the multiple steps involved. So one of the first steps is they assessed what they currently have. There was a JED advisor that had come and also looked at and did a campus visit. With all that information, they make recommendations for each of the campuses about what areas they can enhance, improve, and build upon. And so each of the teams had come to that point. And one of the other things that's through JED Campus is the implementation of the Healthy Minds survey. And so in addition to the self-evaluation and the campus visit, we take the data from the students' Healthy Minds, and all of that comes together to help us look at who is our population? What do they need? What services would best help them out? And so what we did is come this past January, sort of the beginning of the semesters, we took all of the individual teams and we came together as one large group to be able to, instead of having 12 campuses work on 12 similar items, there's definitely power amongst a larger group. And so what we did was we all came together and we agreed to develop work groups with these common strategic items that we need to work on for each of the campuses. But basically, it will be consistent across CT State. So what they have done is we have developed and sort of broke into 6 work groups. And as you see here, so some of the work groups was, so one of the first work groups took basically the mental health and wellness strategic plan, and we've integrated all of the JED objectives. So all the JED recommendations have now been integrated into the mental health and wellness strategic plan to make sure that the recommendations are implemented and will continue moving forward. The second group has been working on and have already stood up a mental health and wellness webpage, and they're now working on additional resources that will be included as we begin to build out the page. A lot of support resources and FAQs and other information. The group 3 has been looking at providing a more of a structured medical leave of absence policy, sort of looking at all the components that we already have in place and how do we pull it together to be able to better enable those who need to take some time off to take care of themselves to be able to go through the system in a way that doesn't penalize them. And so group 4, they have been updating, there is an existing alcohol and drug policy that needed some updating. And so group 4 has been looking at that policy and also looking at what we call the Edgar 86 compliance in regarding alcohol and other drug education. Our group 5 has been working on a post-vention plan, of which, of course, we always hope we'd never have to use, but to make sure that every campus has a plan in place to be able to respond to any type of unfortunate mental health situation on campus and to implement those plans. And group 6, rounding out the group, is part of JED really is talking about educating folks about mental health, decreasing stigma, looking at everything from life skills to other coping strategies. So there's a lot of hopefully programming involved. And so group 6 is looking at sort of what program is needed, what areas. So schools, we've been looking at developing a programming checklist and a log. So the checklist is to make sure that every school is checking the box on multiple areas that are needed. Again, suicide prevention, other mental health and wellness topics, resiliency. And so we've been looking at some of the areas that folks can do the programming. And again, a way to look at what we're doing, how well we're doing it, how we have attendees participating and evaluating some of our programming. So the JED work groups I have to say, kudos to all of the amazing JED leads and co-leads on each campus, and all the teams made up from all the different stakeholders all over campuses have truly put a significant amount of time into implementing some of these really critical mental health and wellness recommendations from JED. So we want to make sure we personally thank every one of them for their incredible work. Next. A couple of new pieces of new resources that we've been able to collectively to have for all of CT State. So there are two significant resources, and some campuses have had one, some campuses have the other. And so now all 12 campuses will be able to have access to two of these really terrific resources. So the contracts have gone through and we're in the implementation phase, and soon the links will be able to be up on the mental health and wellness webpage. So the first service is something called Thriving Campus. And it is a referral database. So basically, any student or any, a parent, a guardian, family member can go onto this database and search on a significant number of factors when looking for an off-campus provider. And they will able to, also look upon what, if they accept their insurance, if they provide in-person versus telehealth, if there's a specific issue, if there is a particular counselor that they're looking for. And so they'll be able to come up with a very specific list of folks who are available, who have openings. And then there is another level of Thriving, which is specific folks on campuses, the wellness counselors and other administrators will be able to have accounts where we can directly support students in actually directly putting in additional variables, such as if they want a specific day and time that they're really looking for an off-campus provider. And we can go in and do that search and directly contact those providers to see if they have that availability and directly connect students with the providers. So it's an extremely helpful service. The other service is called MindWise. So specifically, MindWise Innovations has a number of programs, and we have MindWise mental health screenings. Our students can go on and take any number of 12 different mental health screenings. And it's typically a really first step for a lot of folks when you're not, maybe, you've been experiencing some symptoms, you've been feeling a certain way. A lot of times this is kind of the first step that you take to say, how am I doing and what's been going on with me? And at the end of each of the mental health screenings, they give you information about what next steps you could take, and will directly connect you to your specific resources on your specific campus. So each of these services are being set up with a home campus variable that gives them specific information and resources to their campus, which is helpful. And so that is a wonderful resource. It's also great for programming and for other folks to use it. So these two services, like I said, are currently in their implementation phase, and will then have links on the mental health and wellness page for all the students. Thank you so much. And we will, there we go. We brought Mike back and other folks back for some questions.
So I don't see any questions in the chat now. If anybody would like to ask any questions, feel free to pop one in. Otherwise, maybe we can give a minute, and then I'll have a wonderful afternoon. And thanks so much for your presentation. All right, I think we are all set. Doesn't look like. Let's see, yeah. All right, well, thank you everyone who came. This is going to be recorded. If there's someone you would like to share it with, it'll be on ctstate.edu/webinars, and we'll get it up there promptly, along with the slide deck. And thank you both for coming in to present. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.